Here's what I want to do today, and it kind of got a little bit out of hand. When we originally thought of this idea, it was that I wanted Klee to be able to pick Carolyn's brain about what Carolyn was doing in the city camps, and kind of in exchange, let Carolyn pick Klee's brain about what we were doing at Stomping Ground, because I know that you, Carolyn, have been doing this for about the same amount of time as us, but you've chosen to do some things differently and some things similarly. So I wanted to kind of, instead of having the conversation that was, what is virtual camp, or can virtual camp work, or kind of all of those things, I wanted to say, we're doing virtual camp and we're defining it this way and we're doing it. And it's not can it work, it's how do we make it better? And where can we go from here? That's my goal. And then without really putting it out there in that many places, just tons of people signed up for the webinar. So welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you're here. And I'll try and synthesize some of your questions, but it'll be mostly trying to push everything forward. So if you have questions that are about how do you set up Zoom or those kind of things, we've done a couple of other webinars that you can find on the Summer Camp Society YouTube channel, which I don't know what the link for, but you can find it, I'm sure, if you search in YouTube. And there's tons of information about how to kind of get started with virtual camping. We're going to be just pushed. We're going forward. We're saying we're on step 1. We want to go to step 2 now, or step 3, whatever. You can figure out some kind of metaphor. Yes, people in the chat are wondering. Yes, you are muted, Lindsay. Nobody can hear you. And welcome from Vermont. You can drink a mimosa and hang out. Actually, you can't. I'm sorry. No mimosas. No mimosas for you, Lindsay.
Just juice.
Just juice. Okay. So, Carolyn, will you just tell everybody a little bit about where you are, what you're doing with kind of what you're calling virtual camp, what camp you work for? And what I really care about is kind of a brief synopsis of what you're defining as virtual camp right now, because I know that there's a lot, that term is being tossed around to define a lot of things, and I want to hear what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm within the city camps. Normally we're based out of Atlanta, and we are running actually 2 different things. So every day at 3:30, we offer virtual camp that's like a fun activity. Anyone can drop in. It's 30 minutes. It's after the school day, just to kind of fill your time and see people that you might know. But what we've had a lot of success with is our virtual bunks, which are groups of kids who are the same grade, same gender, just like bunks at our camp would be. And they are actually meeting with 2 of our staff members twice a week for 30 minutes each. And they are playing the games that you would play in your bunk. So like weird charades. The other day they had like a toothbrush competition, whatever that means. And so like the weirdness of camp that I'm such a fan of, and that magic of camp, I think we're really finding success with in these virtual bunks.
I love that. And you call them bunks, but you actually aren't a sleepaway camp normally.
Yes, so we are in the city camps is a day camp that has the best aspects of overnight camp. And so we take bunks, and that's just the term we use, and keep running with it. So any term that you use for your groups would already work.
Cool. And I only say that because I've seen some stuff that's like, is virtual camp better for sleepaway camps or day camps? At this point, I don't think there's a difference. It's just about who the kids you serve are. Your kids tend to be a little younger than ours. That's okay.
Yeah, and I would say like it really doesn't matter as long as your camp is doing what you're good at. Like we're really good at empowering our staff. So our bunks are totally run by high school and college kids. I like pop in and say hi, make sure that Zoom is on and nothing weird is happening. But otherwise they run with it. And starting next week, they're even planning for the activities. So we serve ages pre-K to 6th grade. So 4 to 11.
Cool. Klee, because I haven't checked in a while, what the hell are we doing at Stomping Ground?
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. That was great. Hi, everybody. I'm Klee. We are in week 5 currently of our online programming, which we are calling Hometown Stomping Ground. we run about 6 hours a day of online programming. And on average, we get 7 kids on a call. And I just checked some of our attendance. As of last week, we're serving about 80 kids per week, logging on at different times. I liked how Carolyn said what the point of their program is having really awesome staff and them taking the lead on things. We've been talking a lot about how there's a ton of content out there that kids are able to access right now. And the thing that camps can do differently is less of the sit and gets of just watching things and real interaction, kids hanging out with staff that they love and making real friends and connections online. So that is the main goal of our online programming. And we do some of that through really silly stuff like the Frozen party we were talking about this morning, or we also do it through more facilitated or skill sets like baking, and then some other reflection activities as well to help kids kind of make sense of the uncertainty happening in the world right now.
And Carolyn, your camp in the summer, typically when you're allowed to come together, is a lot bigger than ours. We serve about 120 kids at a time. So yeah. Your program is much bigger.
Yeah, so we serve on our biggest weeks like close to 300. And so each day, similarly to like the 3:30 entertainment half an hour, we've been having around 12 kids. And for the bunks, we actually had over 120 kids sign up. It doesn't mean that they come every time, but it knows that we are waiting for them to come. Yesterday, one kid signed on at like, it's from 2 to 2:30 for one age group. And he signed on at 2:25 and just was like, hey, and then left. And like, great, that's all he wanted that day.
We're seeing that too. We have a guy that sometimes just likes to tune in, doesn't really like the activity, just puts himself on mute and then watches TV. I'm not sure I love that, but like, I don't know. For us, what we're trying to do is give kids a little bit of an escape and have some interaction. And I think one of the things, Carolyn, I love about what you're doing, which is really similar to what we're doing and is different from what I'm seeing from the likes of like Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard, is Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard are super famous and really cool and interesting, and they have infinite resources behind them. And I love that. And they're doing these like live, cool, like programs for kids. And we're not doing that. Like what we're doing is interactive stuff on a smaller scale that has, I think our biggest stuff has had like 30 kids and it's pretty overwhelming. But you can interact, right? Like Carolyn and I can have a conversation, Klee and I can have a conversation. And that's where we're focusing on what we think our differentiation in the market is for this. And I want to say for us, I've been reading so many of and I have a question. I want to ask you a question, Carolyn, about this. But I've been reading all about, is virtual camp sustainable? Can you make money doing this? Blah 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 blah. All that kind of stuff. And I don't know the answers to can Stomping Ground, as it kind of exists now, figure out how to monetize enough to use Hometown Stomping Ground as the #1 revenue generator, the way that Sleepaway Camp is for us normally, right? I don't know the answer to that question. I will say we started Hometown Stomping Ground with the intention of knowing that if camp can't run this summer, and I'm becoming more and more concerned about that every day, and I think that we will almost certainly have to not run all of our weeks of camp, but I don't know yet. There's a bunch of money that people have already paid us, and we wanted to create a service that bought us goodwill so that those people didn't all want their refunds. Because if everybody that has paid us wants their refunds, I would love to give it to them, but we can't. We don't have that money. So we have to figure out how to build some goodwill and not lose a bunch of goodwill. And so for me, any money we can make from Hometown Stomping Ground is secondary to building goodwill to say, there's this pool of money that we've already received. Can I keep it? In a way there's a ton of conversation around refunds and how to do that and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to get into that, but I want to keep that money because that money could sustain us through 2021 if we can't run camp, right? So that was the kind of initial intention from a business perspective. Besides, we're a nonprofit. We have our mission is to connect kids and all that kind of stuff. That's important to me. But from a business perspective, and we're all businesses in camp, whether we want to think about it or not, nonprofit, for-profit, whatever. And the first rule of business is don't run out of money. And if we run out of money, we can't exist anymore. The second rule, Steve Baskin says the second rule of business is don't run out of money. And then he says the third rule is don't run out of money. So my take is I don't want to run out of money. And that's why we started, from a business perspective, that's why we started. Carolyn, will you talk about how you're thinking about like the financial aspect of all this?
Yeah, so we're not charging for the virtual bunks for a couple of reasons. One, because we're testing it. So like, I just wanted to basically see that we could do it and what works and what doesn't. So if we had to do it this summer, we would have a better idea of how to do it. If we have to run virtual camp this summer, we will charge. Definitely not as much as like a normal summer, because we're only probably planning 2 to 2.5 hours worth of programming, like a consistent 9:30 to 12 o'clock block. And then figure, because our day camp kids are already be outside playing in the afternoon and are struggling to get them back inside, and they should be playing outside. The other piece of how I look at it is that we had like budgeted for a lot of our staff to be out in the community already at different festivals and fairs and schools throughout the year, just like spreading our brand awareness and trying to recruit campers. So that piece was already built into our budget. And so we are actually paying our counselors with that allocated money because we were planning on it. So it's just like being out in the community in a different way. And the only way right now that you can be out in the community is by doing these Zoom calls with your campers. I would love, nothing would make me happier than one kid saying like, yeah, in the city camp really helped me during this terrible time. Or I got to see my friend every day, because I think something we're doing is facilitating these relationships, just like Jack is facilitating Klee and me right now, like our staff are doing that for our campers. And so the budget piece this summer, we'll look at it and say, okay, how much are people willing to pay? We just ran a spring break program and threw $25 on there. It was like 12 hours total of programming over 6 days, and had a few people sign up, and we had a better attendance that way. So I do believe that if you pay for something, you are more likely to show up because of the abundance of free content out in the world.
And Carolyn, I'm being selfish now. We're quickly going to turn into selfish time, where I just want to learn from you, and you can just bug Klee about what you want to learn from her. And if we don't get to everything that people want to know, you can, please ask questions in the chat, and we'll try and answer some of them. But because there's so many of us, we probably won't get to all of them. But Carolyn, can you tell us as much as you're able to about like the percentage of the kids who have already joined in the city camps online programming that then paid for the spring break camp?
So not a huge percentage. We had like 14 families sign up for spring break camp, but some of those were siblings. So it upped the number. To be fair, spring break, because we service all of Atlanta, every school in Atlanta has a different spring break, so we kind of cut across too. We've been having a lot of kids who have never come to In the City Camp, though, sign up for our programs and attend our programs. And it's interesting because we like try to put them right now with their friends for bunks. And so we're just learning how to talk, learning who their friends are and where we can put them. So I would say like right now, this is a baller marketing strategy that we didn't plan on, but is spreading our brand awareness. And like all of you guys now know, hey, In the City Camps. And it's just a way to keep your name out there during this time. Didn't really get the question, but I don't really know the answer.
No, that's a great thing. So I asked because we launched yesterday our first paid for program for Stomping Ground, and it's like it's a teen retreat that's happening next weekend, and it's $50 for the weekend, and it's all virtual. You can go to hometownstompingground.org and see what we are putting out there about that. But you can also, when you go to sign up, you can just pay nothing. That's like very within the Stomping Ground ethos of how we do stuff, is that the way we do financial aid normally is that if people want to pay nothing, they just let us know and we do that. And we trust that our little weird liberal community will not take advantage of that. And some people do. Like we can talk, again, this is like another like huge topic of how you do scholarships. But that's within, it's not a big leap for us to have a very simple way for kids to come to camp for free. And so to not have it's not a big leap for that. So I'm intrigued that 14 kids came from your kind of big group. Carolyn, what do you want to know from Klee right now about how things are going?
So I want to know, so we're doing it and we're in it and we're accepting that we're going to keep going. And we've talked about a lot about how we're offering connection, not content. And so like, what would a successful, after however long you plan on doing virtual camp, if they're signing up for the summer, like, what would a successful camper at the end say, like, oh, I got this out of hometown stomping ground?
I love that. I've been thinking a lot about that too, Carolyn. And our baby step approach to this is, one, we just created a parent survey I've seen some other camps sending out a parent survey before they launch their online programming to ask what kinds of things do you want to see. We started this, and our parent survey asks some questions about what favorite activities have been, what have their kids' feedback been. That's one little look I've gotten at this. And the other part of that email blast out to parents was asking them to ask their campers how Hometown Stomping Ground has helped them. Mostly because I want to make a video, and I've gotten a few back. But I think that our goal, a successful camper would feel like the options are really fun and that they're making real connections and staying in touch with staff or other kids, and finding a safe space to talk about how they're keeping busy right now or what's confusing or stressful about the world we're living in right now.
Yeah, I love that safe space. That kid that Jack was talking about with the TV, that's what my mind goes to, of like, if this is a 30-minute space where you feel comfortable and safe of being yourself, and it's kind of like you're watching TV with your friends, even though they're not watching the show at all, that's what I want to keep offering. We have like most of our content is not generational, but like there's pre-K to 6th grade there. And so the person who's been leading that has been really good at offering levels for them. So it's like, okay, if you want to level up, you can do this really cool thing and you can do this. And so some of our younger ones are just happy to be there and be with older kids that they would have seen at camp and watching them and get that safe feeling.
Yeah, I think the first couple times that kids came on to activities and just said, I just want to watch, it was like hard for me leading Zumba yesterday as the facilitator to just be okay with that. And like, I look crazy just doing Zumba on my own. And I think at the end of the day, I'm still talking with that kid, and he might not be doing the exercises with me, but he's watching, and it's some socialization in an online way.
Yeah, I think too, like right now they're being told more to do all of these different things. Yesterday we had comic book making, and I prepared this nice PowerPoint for them to look at and get ideas, and then we signed on. They were like, no, we already know what we're gonna do. And I was like, oh, cool. Like you want to just like draw in silence? Can I put on music while you guys work, and then we'll just share? And they're like, yeah, that's what we want to do. And that to me is camp and empowering the kid.
I think that I was talking with Laura, who helps us run Stomping Ground, yesterday about Stomping Ground never has had any marketing about getting kids outside. I mean, we're a sleepaway camp in the woods, but we don't ever talk about it. And we don't talk about, we've had kids, I know this is going to make people so cranky with us, I'm sorry, but we've had kids bring their cell phones to camp since we started, and we haven't had service, so they become like useless bricks. But so we've never marketed against yeah, we are recording this. We've never marketed against like screens, and we've never been like, look at us getting outside with kids. We've talked about connection, and we call it radical empathy, or we have our taglines, but it's never been anti-screen, and it's never been like super pro outdoors, even though we like getting kids outdoors, and being at camp, they just put their phones down because it's not that fun for them to use their phones. But we do get a little bit of pushback from families about, now this is so much screen time. Carolyn, how are you navigating that mostly communication piece with families around so much screen time. They're stuck inside, but we're trying to do our best.
Yeah, so I think I was talking to you about this and feel like this, especially during the bunks where they're with their peers, is a different kind of screen time. And the reason we limit it to 30 minutes is because I feel like after that time, you start to get a little tired of being on the computer unless you're like always talking. And I think it's just a choice for families. So we have some of our in the city camps, I'll call them groupies, who've been with us for the past 8 years who haven't touched virtual camp or bunks or whatever, and it's just not what they're into. It's fine. We're happy to like talk to them on the phone or just be an email or keep sending out other things. But my sister-in-law, for example, my niece goes to in the city camp and they are really against screen time and have found that bunks are one thing that they're like, okay, fine, because she's practicing a lot of skills that she doesn't get to do throughout the day. So because it's Summer Camp Society and all of our bunks, we use popcorn style. So when I'm done speaking, I have popcorn to Klee. And so that's a really amazing skill to teach these kids how to call on other kids, and a skill that they're not getting throughout the rest of the day because they're not in their classroom environment. So I think it's just talking to parents who have those hesitations of like, what are you looking for and how can we help you? And like, that's why we offer multiple options, because there is no right way. And I think there's like no right way to be in quarantine, which is another thing I keep reminding myself.
I'm thinking of this now because we have plenty of parents who are like, I'm thinking of some in particular who typically would not have their kids on screens, like have been like no screens at all for kids basically. And now they're like wrestling with bringing kids onto screens because it's the only option that they have for connection, like one of these kids in particular, like did a sleepover Zoom thing who like, she's, I don't know, maybe 9 and had never been on, like never really done much screen time, was pretty screenless phone or family. And then now is jumping into like Zoom sleepovers. And I now want to, now that we're talking, and I hadn't thought of this before, I want to create some resources or something to send to parents to help them navigate that transition, because I'm thinking about how to help them transition from like no screens to it's okay to do some part of Hometown Stomping Ground and other screens with your kids, but it's not the end of the world. Have you done anything like that, or do you have any plans to? Where are you on that?
Yeah, I would say we haven't really touched on that more than like just having one-off conversations with parents. I personally feel right now it's important for us to do what we're best at, and I don't think I'm the best at telling parents how to navigate their screen time with their kids. I could like make something up, but it wouldn't be backed by data or science. And so I feel like I'd love to find those resources for parents if they're questioning, but I do feel like the overload of like, here's a million things that you can do with your kid right now is crazy. And I'd be so stressed if I was a parent. And so I feel like just offering in the city camp of like, here's the things that we offer, take it or leave it. And we hope that you'll join us. I think for the summer, we'll push a little bit more about getting our kids and calling kids and saying, have you seen this? Because we find a lot of emails now are just getting lost in the abyss. But what I will say about the screens is we also are running something called Camp Mogul for our middle school age campers, where they're building a business in 5 days, really like 5 hours. And the ideas are great, and they're not as good at technology as we thought they would be. So they make their logos in Canva and then like take forever to pick the font and to figure out how to download it. And so that was just something I wasn't expecting. Like all the time you hear, oh, kids are so good at technology. And then they still need a little bit of help with it.
I love that. Klee, I know you have some questions for Carolyn. Go ahead.
Cool. Carolyn, something that I've been really intrigued by and was not anything I expected from these online calls is our approach to, we talk so much at Stomping Ground, and it's one of the biggest part of our programs is conflict resolution. And we're seeing when conflict happens on Zoom, kids disagreeing or being annoyed with each other, it's different responding to it than it is at camp and you're not in person. So I think I've gotten better at addressing some of those things, and I'm wondering if you've seen that and what it looks like during bunks or some of your other programming.
Yeah, that's funny. Yesterday, I would say we had our first bullying incident on Zoom, and I think camp directors that say bullying doesn't happen at my camp are lying, because it's happening in one way or another. But yesterday I was like, oh, that's bullying. So we had it on the chat feature, and we had sent them to breakout rooms, and the counselor and I were able to discuss what's the best way to talk about this. And with the use of breakout rooms, especially within a larger group, you kind of can have those one-on-ones with kids. Definitely doesn't feel or look the same. But at least then you're able to say hey, what's going on? How can we make this an experience that is important and special for you and make you feel safe here? We also, in the beginning of our camp, in real life, we always sign a contract that the kids make up their rules in the beginning. And so we found that we did that in the for bunks in general too. When we do the everyday thing, they do it they run through in the beginning. I think looking forward to this summer, something that I would say is that contract would be really helpful if kids could see it all the time, and not something that they now did 4 weeks ago. And so finding some way to post it behind you so kids can see it. But proximity in Zoom doesn't really work. Whereas normally if a kid is misbehaving, you're I'll just inch a little closer to you until you get the memo that what you're doing isn't cool. So I think it is a whole new, and even yesterday I was oh, Klee and I probably could have a whole conversation about how you do behavior management on Zoom, which I've not yet mastered.
And Carolyn, just for context, because I don't think I totally understand, when you run bunks, what happens is, let's say the bunk is at 11:30 a.m. The kids, everybody logs onto the same big Zoom call we're on right now, but it's a meeting, not a webinar. And then you send them to different breakout rooms?
So that's what we will do this summer, and what we do for our middle school age. I know there's so many things. For our bunks, we give each one of them their own Zoom link and pay for Zoom so we can have 4 meetings running at once. So if you're in what's called Mitzanim 1, here's your link. You're always going to click on this link at 2:00 on Wednesdays and Sundays, and you're going to have your group. And then with it, we make our counselors the hosts of those groups, and then they do it. Our idea for this summer, though, is to have them come together, split into their bunks, come together, do an activity, and we're kind of playing around with that.
Cool. I love that, and we've thought about that too. Now we're gonna get a little nerdy here. My concern with the this kind of room and then out to breakouts is that the facilitator loses some of the power in the breakout room, because they can't mute people or use some of the extra features that the host can use. And so that's why
if you were a co-host, you could.
Oh, so
so that's whenever we log on, it's okay, you're the other adult in this room, you're the co-host. And I think it really helps too, because back to the behavior thing, I loved this, but it was annoying. This one kid, we asked them to mute themselves when they are not talking so you don't hear that echo. And this one kid was kind of testing the boundaries and seeing what he could get away with. So he would just unmute himself, and then you'd hear something, mute himself. And so then it became my job as the co-facilitator to watch if that kid was muted. And I think he needs to find some way to push the boundaries. And if that's what, he doesn't get to do that in school. So I think it's kind of another cool place and a cool reason why we're doing this.
I love that. And we do that same thing with the co-host. And I'm intrigued to see what the co-host, I've never been a co-host inside of a breakout room. So I should test that to see what it's like to do that. There's some questions in the chat about online safety stuff. We made a quick video to help parents talk to their kids a little bit more about online safety. I think that we are in this weird world where now more than ever, kids are normalizing what it's like to talk to grownups across a screen. And that's really cool because it allows for these kind of opportunities, but it's also really scary because it allows for more people with malicious intent to potentially have more opportunities to try and kind of start grooming kids, which is like a terrifying and awful thing to have to talk about, but it's the reality of the world that we live in today. So we made a quick video to let people start talking about that. And then I know we make sure we have kind of you, Carolyn, you and us, we have two kind of slightly different takes on how to handle this. I know you record all of your sessions for both marketing and safety purposes. And we make sure that there's two people in, two grownups in all of our programs. So we have a host and a facilitator is what we tend to call them. Those are those things. I think we could go down a internet safety rabbit hole. And I know another question is about Zoom, like whether Zoom is safe or not. My research around this has been that Zoom is rapidly becoming safer and safer, and that the end-to-end encryption problem is something that all of the major video platforms are struggling with, except for like FaceTime, and I think there's like one or two other things, but they're much harder to be accessible for more people. So to do FaceTime, you have to have Apple products, right? Whereas Zoom can cross things, and Skype doesn't have end-to-end encryption. And anyway, those are some of the things that I know we're thinking about and struggling with, and we trust our parents to make the best choice for their kids about what is available. Klee, what are some of the things you've noticed and want to ask Carolyn about for our kind of kid management strategies?
I think it's interesting that the first thing, Carolyn, you brought up was the chat. That's where we've seen majority of kids butting heads and disagreeing. And so one tool I've used is it's similar language to what we use in the summer. It's hold up, everybody, can we check in? Carolyn, you're saying this to Jack in the chat, and I don't understand your tone. So can you go off mute and tell him, like using communication and audio, getting across what you want to say. I think the other thing I'm trying to do is there's about 5 hosts that are currently running Hometown Stomping Ground with our other staff as facilitators. And so I check in with them after each session. And in some cases, we've called and checked in with parents just like we would over the summer. How is so-and-so enjoying Hometown Stomping Ground? Here's what we noticed. Are there any other things we should know to best support them? And that's been really helpful for me too, to get a better understanding of what that camper's different needs may be. I think the last piece of this is empowering our staff and helping them understand that just like at camp in the summer, when things come up, you might make different cabin agreements, we call them at Stomping Ground. So an agreement I made during one of our options called night game creation, where kids kept disagreeing and using and telling each other that their ideas were bad or they were annoying them. One agreement we made is if you disagree with someone, that's totally cool, but you can't disagree with them in the chat. You have to disagree with them saying it out loud, and everybody agreed to that, and it helped a lot lessen some of that tension that can happen in the chat. So that's been one major area of conflict for us, and those are a few of the ways that we have responded to it.
Carolyn, what are some of the things that you've learned about facilitating on Zoom that you maybe didn't expect? Like it's that are different from being a facilitator of games or a counselor at camp. They're similar, or maybe you have to turn pieces of yourself up or down. What have you learned about kind of that, or helping your counselors lead things? Because we're always trying to help people be better at running these kind of programs, because some people are really awesome at it, and some people, like one of our best staff members during the summer is, I'd say he's the most well-liked staff member that Stomping Grounds ever had. Kids beg to be in any option that he's running. Really kind of struggles on Zoom. So I'm trying to help him navigate that and other folks navigate that. But what are some things that you've learned that help staff be better at navigating Zoom?
Yeah, so we, during the summer, purposely hire a really diverse staff, meaning like some are total extroverts, some are total introverts, because I think it's important to have different staff because you have different kids. And so when we put out for the bunk counselors, anyone that was interested, we were pretty much able to find a spot for, and still had that like mix of introverts and extroverts. And I did two things. One, we told all of our staff that you have to be a little bit more excited on Zoom than you normally would. And sometimes like the facial expressions that you make, because you can't, it's hard to read your body language if it's only this. And we purposely paired our counselors with people who we thought they would make a good match with. So like one counselor is really good at leading games, and the other counselor is like the best listener. Even I love talking to this counselor and like telling them everything. And so they make an amazing pair. Another pair that we have is like, he'll say it too, he's like a super nerdy guy, and we put him with this super cool girl. And so they make a really interesting pair because they're meeting all of the needs of their campers. The other piece that I would say is like to make it a special event, a lot of our bunks have been dressing up. So the other day I logged on and they were all wearing like pajama masks, which I thought was weird that they all had. And that you can't go as long as you want. So like if a kid needs a break and needs to move, which we've been finding with the kindergarten age group a lot, like you'll just see kids' feet, or like a kid like turned around and gets a ball because they need to be throwing a ball. And counselors have been able to just say like, okay, that's what they need right now. They don't need to be sitting in front of the computer. Kids have like a lot of different ways of listening and focusing.
Klee, same question, or reactions to Carolyn's question or Carolyn's answer?
In helping our staff mainly. One document we made is a Zoom facilitation guide that only gets sent to those like 5 hosts I mentioned that are helping us host Zoom calls. All of our staff are staff that have been to Stomping Ground before, and they don't, there's no required training for them as they're volunteering. And what we've found to be the most important is having that host, like we kind of mentioned this earlier, like Jack is right now, and then having that person manage. I tell them to do all the introductions and conclusions and be the person who's really checking in with kids frequently throughout the call, especially for more skills-based options like cooking or dancing. When they're really learning someone, we do a lot of thumb scale check-ins. The host may say, thumbs up if you know what's going on, sideways you're a little confused, down you have no idea what's going on, you need us to backtrack. That way, the other staff member facilitator can just do the activity and not have to worry about muting kids or checking in as much as they're just focusing on that. So that's the dynamic we care the most about.
The other thing I want to say is that for our bunks, we do a lot of the thumbs up, thumbs down, put your finger like somewhere if you were, just to make sure that we are all on the same page, even if we are not. We have been giving our counselors guides, so it has like the question of the day that you're going to ask, the activity that you're going to do for the day, and the conclusion. Just so they don't have to worry about it right now. I think they've reached a point finally where they're like, just give us like suggestions, which the whole time they've been suggestions, and we'll decide if we want to do that for our group or not. And that's been really helpful, because I think it is like to go on Zoom and start managing kids when that you, even yourself managing your real life kids, is a step up. As much support as we can give them, like he was saying, it's really helpful.
Yeah, I think empowering staff to really own the Zoom call and just push forward or change things up as they would at camp in response to however kids are acting.
Steve McGuire brought his 4 kids to a Disney yoga session that we were running. And then he told me the notes afterward. I begged him to just like send them to me so I could turn them into a blog post, but he hasn't sent them to me yet. And this was like 3 weeks ago. So I have no belief that he's actually going to send them to me. But his feedback was like, yeah, this is great. What you really need to do is focus on your staff member, like keeping it moving. His like way of, he's so good at like synthesizing all this stuff and turning it into like this like one like really excited nugget, right? And he was just like, the key is just keep it moving, like way more than you think you need to in a million other places. And because people are nervous to run stuff on Zoom and kids are a little bit confused and like the hidden curriculum is like pretty weird and not what everyone's used to, his suggestion, and something that we've really pushed, like Klee said, our hosts to do, and our facilitators a little bit, but our hosts more, is just own the room. Like own the room, and more than normal, you're in charge. And being in charge doesn't mean that other people don't get a chance to chime in and those kind of things, but push things forward. Like don't wait for the awkward moment, jump in a little early. And I think that's really helped us think about empowering some of our staff who are really awesome counselors, but like often rely a little bit more on like some of that, like they're cool, so kids want to come and talk to them. And you can have I think you can have like more looser guidelines for your sandbox that you're playing in real life, because kids are used to stuff a little bit more. And I think this is actually helping many of our counselors become better in-person counselors, because they're realizing that by illuminating that hidden curriculum, by building that sandbox really clearly for kids on Zoom, it actually sets everybody up for more success. And I think we've been trying to push that in real life for years. And so I actually think that a really cool side piece of this is that our Zoom counselors are going to become better in-person counselors as a result of some of this practice and like building confidence in a different way.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I was the host on that call with that staff member, and the things she was missing, she brought the hype, she brought the fun, she had her theme, she had everything planned out. But the things she was missing, not seeing those nonverbal cues, was she would be in a yoga position and not explain how she got there. So then I was able to come in and be like, all right, looking at Caitlin, you're going to put your hands on the floor. You're going to move your hips this way. That kind of language is what she was missing, that narration piece, which is a big part that we encourage our hosts to do a lot extra of than they would in person.
We've noticed too, like practice is making better. Definitely not perfect. So our counselors have now run 8, I think, bunks. And their vibe and the way that it flows is much better, and their skills are getting stronger. It's not going to happen overnight. Like I even emailed Klee last week and I was like, why are the kids not friends? And they had like met each other twice. And I was like, that's not happening on Zoom. And like even over a week of spring break camp, you're able to see like when kids were missing, other kids would ask about them and our counselors would ask about them. And, remember things about your dog or your brother. And so I think as you head into this crazy new world, you have to be able to say yourself, like, I'm not going to be an expert at this day one, but all of us are going to build these skills together. When we have our staff meetings, like we always start with what's working, what's something you want to change. And it's just been so helpful to learn from our staff.
Carolyn, I'm intrigued by this personally. So I don't have a great answer to it for us. And I bet your answer is going to be like, very like, well, this is what we're thinking, but where do you, and it's okay that we're not going to hold you to this, but where do you, this is all the caveats I give to like high school seniors that are applying for college and they've heard from so many adults, like, where are you going? Where are you going? What do you want to do? And I'm like, dude, it's okay if you don't know, just like, what do you think? How are you navigating this process? What are you thinking about for what comes next? What are some things you're trying, and what are some big ideas or small ideas that you wish you could try? Kind of what do you see as the future for in the city camps virtual programming over the next year or so?
Yeah. So I think what's something that's cool is that this is now something that people are going to be used to. And obviously you're not going to want to be on Zoom calls all day, but I don't think it's going to be that weird to meet your bunk on Zoom, especially if it was an overnight camp or even a day camp. And then when you got to camp, you would at least know some of the kids and know their face. So honestly, right now we're looking at the issue of burnout as a real challenge, because we've never offered camp in March, April, May, June, July, August. Like that is a really long time. And so as we look forward in May, we're changing our strategy a little bit to be week-longs because of Stomping Ground, where kids are going to sign up for the week. So it's not like you have to be coming up with different content every day. And our bunks are actually going to go on pause in May so we can bring them back in June and really ramp them up. I feel like this was my experiment in April. We got our results, and now I can use that data to make better bunks in June. I think so. I actually am based out in New Orleans, and we just got our stay-at-home order extended to May 16th. So it's like, all right, like we're in this. Let's make it great, not just let's throw something on. So conversations like this of like, let's go deeper, let's do this better, not just let's throw something up, or is the direction that I'm looking for. And I'm looking at how, I don't know, I keep going back to these like poor seniors who were supposed to have their senior year, and it's supposed to be that best last months of their life, and they've been looking forward to it. So that is one question I keep returning to, like, how can I make these seniors and kids or staff members who missed a lot of their school get some of their life back through our camp program? And we've seen that leadership is really helping, and they feel empowered through that. So that is one new challenge I'm taking on.
Jack, you want to go? I was just going to say I'm with you, Carolyn, and thinking about seniors both in college and high school, and we have both on our staff. This week, we just started doing mutual aid groups for our staff, where we picked 4 staff who were willing to volunteer their time to talk with 4 other staff on Zoom or whatever platform they want. We kind of like gave them the information, and they can take it from there and do it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever their group is wanting, but really just a check-in group for staff to kind of vent and make sense of everything and lean on each other in a little bit more of a facilitated way.
My niece texted me this morning. She's about to be a first-year staff member at Stomping Ground, and she's really excited about her. We call them 411 groups. So I don't know what it's going to be like. We don't know that, but I agree. We are nervous about our staff well-being, and also like we may be Nancy, thanks for being here. You just posted like, are you going to pay your staff during the summer if we do virtual camp? And that's a great question that we're navigating right now. And I don't know. We're doing our first test of paid programming, kind of like Carolyn's spring break camp for teens coming up. And that'll give us a little bit of information about, is there revenue possibility for what we are offering? Do we need to change the offerings? Is it not worth that? And should we be focusing on finding major donors who can help us bridge this gap? I think we're going to be trying to do all those things kind of from like a very business standpoint, and that will help us see what we can do for our staff. But I'm very much afraid of the email that I imagine I'm going to have to send, that's to our families canceling camp, and then to our staff being like, hey, you were counting on, these paychecks, and we don't have them to pay you. And so anything we can do to try and mitigate that, like maybe we can't hire everyone, maybe we can't pay everyone as much as we wanted, maybe, I don't know what that's going to look like, but that's, something that I spend a lot of time worrying about and trying to figure out is, what's the financial reality of this, and how does that impact not just our campers, but our staff too, who, some of them don't need, some of our staff I've already sent us messages like, I will help however I can, and you don't need to pay me. My parents are going to take care of me. We have, I'd say half of our staff are in a situation like that, where their parents know that this is a really hard time, and their parents have the means to kind of take care of them. And I'd say half of our staff are needing more financial help, whether that's because their families don't have very much wealth, or they're older and they, have more bills. So I think that's a reality that we're trying to work through. And I know, Carolyn, you have in the city camps kind of found a non-fee-for-service way of kind of starting to mitigate that?
So we pay our staff who work, we pay them $10 an hour, and they work 3 hours for us a week for bunks. And we're able to go to donors and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and we're doing something. And we're not just waiting for everything to go back to normal, which has been a really powerful message. I think there is no normal now, which is something that I really struggle with. But I want to pay our staff this summer, but also know like they're only going to be working 3 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day. So like that, from a financial standpoint, they can't make as much money. And that is part of the reason why we're doing like just in the mornings, because maybe in the afternoon they could do something. The other piece that we're thinking about for like costs for families is what's something that you would pay if by June, maybe your grandparents could come over and help watch the kids so you could work. What's something that you still would pay so your mom and dad could have a break sort of while they were still watching the kids? Because it's a long day to be with kids, and let's provide something that families find useful, and maybe they don't mind missing one day where it's not that high and they're like, yeah, it's fine. And we have had a lot of staff who are just like, I just need something to do. And so some staff, their brains are like, yep, I'm on it. Like, I've already done this. We're already planning this. And some staff you really do need to work with and say, hey, it actually is really helpful if every Wednesday and Sunday you have something at 2:00. And that really has been helping with their attitudes, and like that it's giving them some control back, which is like an unexpected thing that we found.
I love that. And I know that your organization is much better at fundraising than our organization is at kind of preparing for ways to speak with donors and building on the relationships that you've already built with awesome donors who then are like, oh, I already believe in what you're doing. This is how you're doing your best to continue to help. Awesome. Can I help? And then having an answer when I know we try and have an answer. Can I help? Yes. And then we'll figure out what it is that you can do. And it's faster if you can kind of show them something.
Others say like we're starting to get from other nonprofits in the Atlanta area, like virtual things that they're doing. And so it's just checking in with them to say, hey, like, how are you doing this? Let me pick your brain. And like, where is your funding come? Because like, we can't pay you $500 to come lead an aquarium session or whatever, but like maybe there's something we can work out.
Right. I love that. Klee, do you have anything that you want to ask Carolyn? We've got a little bit of time left. There's some questions in the chat about kids with physical and emotional like disabilities or different abilities. I'd say just kind of from our population of kids that come to camp, we are a relatively neurotypical, relatively able-bodied camp. We probably have more kids with more stuff than just the average camp, but we're not, in any way kind of focused. Like that's not a cornerstone of what we do. We just tend to have, I think, more kids on the autism spectrum or with ODD or things like that than average because of our programming. And those kids have a tough time in any settings that we're facilitating, and they also have a tough time in these kind of situations. Klee, I know you've had a little bit of conversation with families about that, but not a ton.
Yeah, our approach for campers are part of Hometown Stomping Ground who are on the spectrum or have ADHD. I've talked with their parents and done check-ins on here's what I think they should know. We call this the hidden curriculum at Stomping Ground and talk a lot about it. And here's some like extra information that will be helpful to them. And we haven't really seen other problems from there. Just like we do at camp, we give them, we just might meet their needs in different ways where I'm not calling everybody's parent necessarily, but calling some who need some extra information about how to be the most successful on the call. And their parents are able to give me more ideas about how to better support them on Zoom. So that's been our approach there. My last question for Carolyn in the small amount of time we have left is you mentioned middle school age. And I think that the way our program is structured is that might be a population we're missing. I feel really confident about our 5 and unders, this like new program we've launched for the preschool age. And then most of our daily programming is in that like 6 to 9, 10. And then we offer some stuff specifically for teens. We don't see as many 11, 12-year-olds on the daily options. And I'm wondering if you have found any advice there, specific activities or ways to get that population.
Yeah, so we were not touching them at all with our daily activities, and our bunks kind of age out at day camp at 6th grade. So we do during the summer have a program that's 7 to 9, roughly. And we found that right now they're making a business. So they come up with an idea of a problem that they're solving, and then they are put in teams. And we do give them a lot of trust with like someone comes up with the issues of bullying and like how to use a computer correctly. But I think they're at an age where they want to be trusted more. So you just have to go with that. And at camp, that's what we would be doing too. Like during the summer, we bring them to different companies and they interview people. And so we're just trying to give that like, okay, you're an adult, like we're treating you, we're respecting you. Similarly, our daily activities are that 6 to 9. Like I think if you are a 2nd grade girl, this is the best thing ever for you. And so I'm always pushing like what are other activities that we could do, because even if we offer like sports and stuff, it's still these 2nd grade girls and 1st grade girls that we're getting over and over again. And so I'm curious like to now come up with more ideas. And that's why I like the bunks, because the boys have been showing up a lot more.
I love that. I think that a lot of our programming and like the language of our options is accessible to that 11, 12-year-old, but if they log on and see mostly 6-year-olds, they're not going to want to hang out, which is different than camp. So that's good advice. Thanks. Yeah,
that intergenerational, it takes like, it's not intergenerational, but interageral, whatever, if that's a word. It's taking some time, and like, I think it is so fast, just like here people logged on are like, oh, nope, not interested, and can log off. Whereas at camp, you're like, nope, you're here. Like, we're going to make this work. And so that when you were saying introductions earlier, that's why they're so important, to get everyone on the same page. The other one tip I will share before we run out of time is we have found it super, super important that like you can see my name is Carolyn, I hope on Zoom. You have got to change the kid's name to their name instead of their parents' name, because often it'll say like Eileen's iPad, and then you're having to remember that that kid's not named Eileen and what their actual name is. So from the beginning, we just needed a standard like change your name, and then you know everyone's name.
I love that. We sometimes we have fun with kids changing their names to like silly things like Mr. Hot Dog Man. But I agree that it's hard unless you know people's names. And just like at camp, we talk all the time about using names as like a superpower. And so using names in these kind of things is also a superpower. Well, Carolyn, I don't want to take up any more of your time. And Klee, I know you've got to get back to work. So thank you all so much. We will send all of this out in an email as soon as I can get it up on YouTube, which takes a while because these are huge files. But you all are awesome. And Carolyn, thank you. Klee, you're the best. And I want to say, as you all are thinking about running virtual camp programming, or you're already running it and doing awesome stuff, please do what you can to share what you're doing with the camp world. I'm trying to read everything that I can about what other people are doing, because we're in a time where none of us know what is happening. And so the more we can share, the better. And I'll say that I was pretty nervous about virtual camp programming actually mattering at all. It started for us as very much a service for parents, like, can we give you all a break? And now we're starting to see the actual impact with kids, where kids are making friends and building connections, stuff that I didn't know if I believed was possible. And I love it. I love that the kids can do that. I think you all can do that. And I think what you all do matters so much for these kids, whether it's through virtual camp or not running virtual camp at all and getting ready for fall retreats, winter retreats next summer. I don't know when we're going to be able to all get together, but what you do matters so much. And the kids that you're going to impact are going to need your love more after this than maybe ever before, after they've been stuck inside and are going to go wilding out when they get outside. So thanks, y'all. You're amazing. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Well,